Hello, my name is Madison Nobbs, and I am the Executive Director of the Ketamine Assisted Therapy Association of Canada. We are a dynamic and innovative member-based not-for-profit organization that is focused on the advancement of ketamine-assisted therapy. We hold the vision of having this therapy be available in a safe, accessible, and responsible way across Canada, which includes outside of highly restricted and inaccessible hospital settings and in the safe hands of caring physicians and therapists. There is an incredible unmet need for effective treatments for depression, suicidality, and other mental health conditions. It is important that the regulation of ketamine and psychedelic medicines be ethical and carefully considered, as the impacts and outcomes on society will be great. As an organization, we are committed to providing a transparent and inclusive platform for these discussions to take place to encourage the most engagement and collaboration possible. We very much look forward to engaging with you all further.
Welcome to the first annual World Psychedelics Day. My name is Shannon Spadella, and I'm the spokesperson and business advisor of World Psychedelics Day. And I'm pleased to be your host for the discussion today with two legendary pioneers in the psychedelic field, Dr. Andrew Weil and Amanda Fielding. The International Psychedelics Awareness Foundation is a nonprofit organization welcoming collaborators and allies, upholding the values of sustainability, accessibility, diversity, and inclusivity. Any funds raised from this event, which is offered for free to you today, will help offset the cost of production. So thank you for being here, because your participation and donations make it all possible. Dr. Andrew Weil is a world-renowned leader and pioneer in the field of integrative medicine, a healing-oriented approach to healthcare, which encompasses body, mind, and spirit. Combining a Harvard education and a lifetime of practicing natural and preventative medicine, Dr. Weil is the founder and director of Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine at the University of Arizona, where he also holds the Lovell Jones Endowed Chair in Integrative Medicine and is clinical professor of medicine and professor of public health. The center is the leading effort in the world to develop a comprehensive curriculum in integrative medicine. Graduates serve as directors of integrative medicine programs throughout the United States, and through its fellowship, the center is now training doctors and nurse practitioners around the world. Dr. Weil is an internationally recognized expert for his views on leading a healthy lifestyle, his philosophy of healthy aging, and his critique of the future of medicine and healthcare. Amanda Fielding is the founder and executive director of the Beckley Foundation and is widely recognized as a leading force behind the current psychedelic renaissance by establishing key research programs at some of the world's most prestigious institutions. She has propelled the field forward for over 20 years, conducting landmark studies such as the world's first psilocybin for treatment-resistant depression study. Andrew, your work, as well as your own personal experiences with psychedelics, are legendary. You were there for the Richard Alpert, Houston Smith, Timothy Leary, Harvard Psychedelic Drug Research Project. You wrote early research papers on cannabis. In the early 1970s, you traveled around North America, South America, and Africa studying drug use and medicinal plants. Your first best-selling book, The Natural Mind, about substance-induced altered states of consciousness, and the great Buddhist author Alan Watts, had a deep understanding of the dynamics and principles of consciousness. In the 70s, you conducted research on medicinal and psychoactive plants on behalf of the Harvard Botanical Museum. You collaborated on a study with Wade Davis about 5-MeO-DMT and the secretions of the Bufol alvarius. You authored a scientific article on the use of hallucinogenic mushrooms, which inspired the name of a psilocybin species, Psilocybe
Right we
Wiley. I hope I got that pronounced.
Yeah,
Wiley eye.
right.
So you have a magic mushroom named after you. How amazing is that? I was wondering, given your remarkable journey with psychedelics, how have psychedelics helped to shape the way that you see the world?
And well, first of all, I'm struck by the fact that Amanda and I are contemporaries, not only in age, but in our psychedelic experiences. I first took mescaline in 1961. And over the next 20, 30 years, I experimented with a great variety of psychedelics, synthetic, natural, plant form, so forth. Had very varied experiences, but I would say um, the sum total of them has been foundational to my way of thinking, my philosophy, certainly my philosophy of integrative medicine. Psychedelics have shown me that what I experience in the world around me is intimately connected with what I have inside my head, and that I can change things in the external world by changing things inside myself. Also, psychedelics have really made me aware of what I would call the magical nature of existence. And I'm very grateful to them for that.
You both have mentioned something about the mystical experience as well as the mind body connection. And we're going to touch a bit on both of those here. But I do have a question for you in regards to what's happening with the medicalization of psychedelics. When you were discovering psychedelics for the first time, the world was very different with very different attitudes towards psychedelics. It must have been a very exciting time leaping into the psychedelic unknown. And we're now in the midst of a psychedelic renaissance. The New York Times recently called it a psychedelic revolution. How would you respond to those who say that the current medicalization of psychedelics is a conservative approach and that we should keep psychedelics for personal, non institutionalized use in spiritual practices?
First of all, way back then, I don't think anyone imagined the kind of repression that would come that really stopped all research on psychedelics for so many years. And still, they remain in federal Schedule 1 under US law and unavailable for therapeutic use. So I think working to make them available for medical use is a key step in their rehabilitation. One of the things that's driving this is the epidemic of conditions like PTSD, OCD, especially among returning war veterans that are not manageable by conventional medicine. And I think the motivation to find ways of dealing with these conditions is a powerful force on the government to make these available for therapeutic use. So I see that as a good thing. But I think medicalization is only one aspect of the rehabilitation of psychedelics, and there is indeed whether you call it a renaissance or a revolution. It's amazing to see how these have now begun to penetrate mainstream culture. Before COVID, I was traveling a lot and speaking, and wherever I went, and no matter what subject I was speaking on, whether it was healthy aging, nutrition, integrative medicine, I would get questions about psychedelics. You know, where can I find them? How can I find a psychedelic guide and so forth? I think it was last month, there was a cover story on in Vogue magazine on psychedelics. And just this week, there was one in Good Housekeeping magazine about their potential for use in treating mental emotional disorders. So that is surely an example of how far this has come.
Wow, it's difficult to summarize 50 years in 3 minutes, but I would say that they've been pivotal in my understanding of the world. I was so very grateful to have come across them when I did. And even more than coming across them, which I did in 1965, it was learning how to use them to enhance cognition and to really be in control of one's enhanced cognition. And that was really a turning point in my life, which happened in 1966. And before that, I'd, from early childhood, been very passionate about mysticism and the study of comparative religions from the age of kind of 6, 7, because my godfather was a Buddhist monk. And Anyway, it was my passion. And I was in a very lonely, isolated place. I grew up. So one had nothing much to do except mooch around and have mystical experiences.
Is this where we should be right now? Are we on track 50 years later? Could you ever have seen prohibition happening?
You know, I met and knew Tim Leary when he was just starting his research on with LSD and psilocybin, and he was so fired up. He thought that these things were the most wonderful discovery ever, and that their potential for changing humanity for the better was vast. And he did not in any way anticipate the kind of reaction that he was going to provoke, or that the widespread use of the substances would provoke. So I would say no, none of us really saw that coming. And it's unfortunate that the U.S. has really been the source of most of this. It's our drug laws, which have been the model for drug laws around the world and have been the framework for the UN Single Convention on substances. And it's just completely irrational and a great mistake that the psychedelics, along with cannabis, are put in Schedule 1, which is defined as substances that have no therapeutic potential and a high potential for abuse. And, it's ironic. These have tremendous therapeutic potential, and their potential for abuse is much, much lower than that of most drugs that we use in medicine.
I thought it was an irritating glitch which we would get over. But it was so expedient for the government to have the war on drugs. It was completely ridiculous, rationally. And it has caused catastrophic suffering around the world. And it really is time that we revisit and rewrite the UN conventions so that we decriminalize psychoactive compounds and we reschedule them so that we can do research and prescribe them to people in need. It's an urgent need, and I would beg governments to back this move. These compounds are amazing transformers of the personality and the inside soul. And we mustn't think that medicalization is the only aspect where they have value. They have immense value in more spiritual and self-knowledge and all of those aspects. And I hope in time society evens itself out from this 50 years of prohibition to realize that these are truly God-given gifts to humanity. And if we learn to use them intelligently, we can become a happier and healthier species. They can alter our consciousness. And after all, our consciousness is the center of who we are. Historically, consciousness has always been a dirty word with science. The great scientist said, if you put the word consciousness in a funding application, you get refused. And now consciousness is accepted. And instead of prohibiting it, society should respect it and agree that it's not for everyone, but for those who want to travel in those areas, they're very useful for society and they should be welcomed. We need to revisualize how we value these different levels of consciousness and respect the altered ones as bringing fresh information to us, rather struggling, neurotic ape that we are. I realized that the only way forward was to do the very best research to demonstrate its great potential to help humanity. Through the research that we've done, we've shown that at the very center of the healing process is the mystical experience, because science killed off the mystical, spiritual aspect of life, and now it's been rebirthed at the center of science. And I'm very interested in further researching the changes underlying the mystical experience and why and how it's so correlated with successful outcomes to overcoming addiction or depression or post-traumatic stress disorder, all of these conditions which are an epidemic at the moment in our society.
I'm wondering, how can experiencing the mystical and going through these altered states of consciousness help the world and help what people are currently going through with the state of mental health that the world is in right now?
From my perspective as a practitioner and teacher of integrative medicine, I'm really aware of um, the constrictive effect of the materialistic paradigm that dominates medicine and dominates science. Materialism says that all that is real is that which can be measured, seen, touched. If you observe a change in a physical system, the cause has to be physical. There's no allowance for non-physical causation of physical events. That's why mind-body medicine is not taken seriously. I think when one has a mystical experience, you instantly become aware that there's another way of looking at things. For me, consciousness is the most marvelous aspect of our experience. And I believe everything is conscious. This is something that I've learned in my psychedelic experiences. I believe, animals are conscious, plants are conscious, rocks are conscious. I think consciousness is the basic stuff of the universe. But that's very much at odds with the prevailing view in science that consciousness is a byproduct of biochemistry or electrical activity in the brain. And I think as more and more people come to have psychedelic experiences that reveal this other way of looking at things, I think that can really green up science, medicine, and many other areas of human activity.
I think the experience of the mystical experience, which one can get through a psychedelic compound, changes the viewpoint. It's like going up the mountain. You have a wider, looser, more flexible vision. And funnily enough, our research with brain imaging has demonstrated that. It has demonstrated how the whole brain is interconnected, and the inhibitory, repressive part of the brain, which is the ego, which is very essential for us to function in the way we daily do, has its blood supply lessened, so it's less constricting. And so all the rest of the brain is suddenly able to communicate. And that's why it's a much more entropic or chaotic, flexible state of consciousness. And that's why it's also very valuable, because it can help us adapt, which we need to do as circumstances change, and learn. And why it is that in the psychedelic assisted state, people can more likely overcome their depression or addiction or whatever bad behavior, thought patterns they've got into, because it makes the brain, the mind, more flexible. So we need to learn to use that flexibility. And it also unifies the whole experience, like it does in the brain, but also in the world. You become part of nature. You lose your division of the ego and also yourself and the rest of the world. And I think that's rather a healthy experience, to know that we're all kind of one big seething unity, really. And I think it changes perception in a very valuable way. And it's amazing the number of people who say they were never the same again after that opening of their vision.
Let me tell you a story about flexibility and psychedelics, since you referred to that. When I was about 28, was learning Hatha yoga. And I had great difficulty with some of the postures. And the one that I had most trouble with was the plow, where you lie on your back and raise your legs and touch your feet behind your head to the floor. I was able to get my feet within about a foot from the floor and had excruciating pain in my neck. And I made no progress out of it. And I was on the verge of giving up, because I felt that I began to think I was just too old to do this and my body was too stiff. And one day, it was in a spring day, I was living in the country in Virginia. I took LSD with some friends. It was a glorious day, everything was magical and fabulous, and my body felt totally elastic and wonderful. And I thought, gee, I ought to try that posture. So I lay on my back and was lowering my feet. I thought I had about a foot to go, and they touched the ground. I couldn't believe it. I raised them and lowered them. It was just delightful. The next day I tried to do it, and I got my feet within a foot of the floor, and there was excruciating pain in my neck. But I was different because now I had experienced the fact that I could do it. If I had not had that experience, I think I would have given up. And it seems to me this is one of the great potentials of psychedelics. They can show you very powerfully possibilities that you would never have believed possible. They may not give you information about how to maintain those possibilities, but they can motivate you to work at them and achieve them in other ways that are sustainable. And I've seen this again and again, that they reveal possibilities. They show you magical outcomes and can motivate you to really change the way you behave and the way you think.
Yes, I quite agree. They can give you a potential that you never expected you had. Like when I became convinced in 1966 of the amazing beneficial possibilities of psychedelics, I would never have imagined that I, who grew up in complete seclusion in the depths of the country on the edge of a fen, could ever influence global drug policy or open the doors to scientific research. But just because I decided, well, that's what I have to do, that must be my mission, then I find one can do things one doesn't think one can do normally, like touching your feet to the floor behind you. And that's wonderful. It gives you a wonderful extra potential, I'd say.
And Andrew, I understand you yourself were actually cured of cat allergies after a psychedelic experience.
Yeah, this was something unexpected. Also, it was about the same time in my life. I had a lifelong allergy to cats. If a cat came near me, my eyes would itch, and if a cat licked me, I'd get hives in the area that it licked. So I just assumed I could not interact with cats, and I always avoided them. And again, on an LSD experience, and when I was in a very relaxed state, feeling at one with things, a cat jumped into my lap, and I had a momentary defensive reaction of, drawing back. And then I realized this was silly, and I just let myself relax, and I played with the cat, and I had no allergic reaction, and I never have had one since. So instant disappearance of a lifelong allergy as a result of that state. I think that's magical. And allergy is a learned response of the immune system, and anything learned can be unlearned. And this is one way of doing it. And that's an example of the kind of use of LSD and other psychedelics for dealing with clinical problems, not just mental health problems, not just anxiety and depression, but physical problems that also have to do with mind-body interactions.
Mm-hmm. I had a similar experience back in 1966 when I had got together with Bart Huges, this Dutch scientist, and I had started smoking because I was very tall as a child. At 13, I realized I was too tall. I must stop growing. So I took up the habit. And so by 23, it was quite stuck. And he said how he hated the smell of cigarettes. And so I decided, well, I must give it up. And at that point, we were living on LSD. Rather, in those days, one took high doses, 250 micrograms. And so I decided I'll take LSD and give it up. And that's what I did. And so 50 years later, whenever it was, when I was talking to Roland Griffiths at Johns Hopkins, and we were thinking what study we might do with the $5,000 I had to do a study with them, I suggested doing overcoming nicotine, as I knew it worked, because I had done it in the 60s. And then that turned into this very successful study, having an 80% success rate in overcoming nicotine addiction. So it gives one magical powers over oneself. And it is, traditional people with good reason called it the gift of the gods. And I think it's a tragedy that human society went wrong at some point and decided to criminalize it. And I'm afraid probably the Christian church, although I think it started with a full love of the psychedelic state, was largely responsible for suppressing it. Mm-hmm. And now we've come to a point where it's time we overcame it. And hopefully we are.
I think we are.
You both have mentioned the mind-body connection, and I want to touch on a question for that, as well as research. And Andrew, you've been called the guru of alternative medicine. Your practice of integrative medicine takes in account the whole person and uses all appropriate evidence-based therapies. When we were putting together our mission statement for World Psychedelics Day, you reminded us to include the physical benefits, and we've touched on some of those already that psychedelics offer, as well as the psychological. Can you talk a little bit about what you've seen in patients, or read about in studies around what psychedelics can do specifically for physical ailments and diseases?
Yes. First of all, I'm not a guru. I advocate integrative medicine, which is the intelligent combination of conventional medicine and natural and preventive strategies. A key plank of integrative medicine philosophy is that patients are more than physical bodies. And a great limitation of conventional medicine is that it's entirely focused on the physical body, and all treatments are directed to the physical body. But people are also mental, emotional beings, spiritual entities, community members, and those other dimensions of human life have to be taken into account to understand health and illness. In my clinical practice over the years, I have again and again seen that the roots of illness are often in the mental emotional sphere. And this resonates with a principle of traditional Chinese medicine that I always found useful, which says that all visible disease is preceded by what they call invisible disease. And by invisible disease, Chinese medical philosophers mean disturbances in the energy circulation of the body. And they say if that's not detected and corrected, it will eventually crystallize into the physical body when it becomes much more difficult to treat. And again, I have seen, as I said, the roots of physical illness often being in the non-physical realm. And that if that's not addressed, that treatment is not effective. So integrative medicine makes great use of mind-body therapies, including things like hypnosis and visualization and biofeedback and the whole range of them. And these interventions are not only highly effective, they're extremely cost effective. Many of them are even fun for both the practitioner and the patient. And I've written up many case studies of positive outcomes of this sort of thing, and some of them involving the use of psychedelics to take advantage of that mind-body connection. And I've seen everything from the disappearance of allergies that I've stated to remarkable remissions of cancer. A particular group of illnesses that I find responsive to this are autoimmune diseases. And these, this is everything from rheumatoid arthritis to lupus, a whole range of them, are not very well managed by conventional medicine. They are treated with drugs that are toxic and have many side effects, and those drug treatments are suppressive rather than curative, so that when the doses are lowered or the drugs are stopped, the disease returns or spreads to other systems. And mind-body methods can be, especially when combined with changes in lifestyle, can be extremely effective. And I think that's one area where psychedelic assisted therapy could be incredibly useful, again, to give patients an experience that they can live in their bodies in a different way, that they can interpret what's happening in their bodies in a different way that gives them freedom from some chronic pattern that they've been locked into. I think this is also true of chronic pain. I've seen remarkable disappearance of chronic pain during psychedelic experiences. And again, it can give a person a sense that this is a real possibility. Even if it comes back when the substance wears off, you can then be motivated to figure out how to get there more often.
I absolutely agree. And I think we're just at the foothills of understanding how incredibly non-specific psychedelics are in how they can improve and change the situation.
So when I hear, that now everybody's talking about using these for depression, for anxiety, for PTSD, for OCD, I want to leave out the possibility of using these much more widely in clinical medicine for applications in a range of physical diseases where they might be extremely useful.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I think we've only just begun to touch on how they can help with neurodegenerative illnesses. I've just done an incredibly exciting experiment with how it can help with Alzheimer's, bringing back an old lady of 97 who had gone into a very haunted state. And then suddenly she was sparkling with love and vitality. And it can do all sorts of wonderful things that we haven't really even touched on. And the future is so exciting in the different areas we can explore in how these compounds can help poor suffering. Humanity is at a very crucial spot at the moment. It's kind of dashing for the cliff face and mounting epidemic of mental illness and illness of every sort. And we haven't, the pharmaceutical world is not producing fit for purpose treatments for most of the illnesses. And psychedelics are hitting such a core of our personality, the very core. It's in my thoughts, and I hope to discover if this is so or not soon, is it's like irrigating a field. It's providing more blood for the brain capillaries and indeed the capillaries of the body. So not only is the brain getting more active, but also the body. And I think as we continue our explorations, I'm absolutely fascinated with the exploration of, say, telepathy. I know it exists, and it'd be lovely to just kind of slightly unravel it. I think it's very much related to the mystical experience and intuition and the qualities that animals have. So we are an animal, so we want to open up our more deep qualities. And so I think we're at a very, very exciting transitional point where if we embrace this new knowledge and possibility, I think it will widen up the human condition. And I mean, if people are conscious of when humans first kind of burst into cognitive superlative behavior in the caves of Chauvet about 40,000 years ago, when they went from making a spearhead for 100,000 years, pretty well the same, to making an incredible art which has never been surpassed in the center of the earth. Well, maybe now, and I think that was stimulated by the use of psychoactives. I think if humanity, or at least parts of humanity, starts to use these compounds and knowledge we've now accrued with science and everything else, we can have a new flowering, hopefully, and become a happier and healthier species.
Well said. Another area of application is in palliative care and end-of-life care. The head of palliative care at the University of Arizona came to me a few months ago and said it just killed her that psychedelics were not available for her to use with dying patients. She said it could end so much suffering and reduce so much fear around the experience of approaching the end of life. That's another great application that I see.
I totally agree. I think it's my favorite application. And funnily enough, the FDA doesn't consider it an application, dying. It's completely. But I'm just starting 2 studies using psychedelics for palliative care. One with a natural psilocybin in Jamaica and another with LSD in the United States. And I feel as a society, we die so badly. We need to bring happy death to the foreground of how we can do that. And I'm very convinced that in that new model, psychedelic assisted therapy will be valuable. And I have to say that I'm a great lover of microdosing as well as because that is a level that people can live on without being shaken. It just slightly vitalizes, makes them slightly more excited by their own thoughts and pleasures and love more and feel more whole. And also, we've done a research with LSD and microdosing, a lab-based research, which shows that it improves the mood, increases cognition, and also increases pain management. Well, those are three qualities. What more could you hope for to help people in the aging situation? So I see new palliative care homes as happy places, filled with fun.
A nice vision.
With this exploration, as you put it, there's definitely a lot of potential for healing on all levels. And a lot of the focus has been on the physical level, especially in conventional medicine. And we talked about the physical and the psychological level. But when someone is going into, let's say someone, has, as you mentioned, we're in an epidemic of illness. So someone with either, an autoimmune or pain management, what advice would you give to that person when they're going into a psychedelic state to, alleviate this illness? Do they need to go beyond the mental and the physical into that energetic realm? What advice would you give them?
Can I bring up one caution about psychedelics? And this is an observation that was really made by Tim Leary long ago. He was one of the first people to write about the importance of set and setting, of expectation and environment in which a substance is used. And the experience that one has when one takes a psychedelic is a product not only of the drug, which drug it is and what dose, but of a person's expectations, both conscious and unconscious, of what will happen. Also the expectations of the person that he or she might be with, and the environment, both social and physical, in which the substance is taken. And the magic is not entirely in the substance. It is a product of those variables. And for that reason, I think it's important for someone unexperienced with psychedelics to use them under the guidance or in the company of an experienced guide or therapist or shaman if you're in a traditional society. So when dealing with, say, an autoimmune disease, ideally you would work with a practitioner of some sort who has experience in working with mind-body interactions in that realm and can guide the experience in a useful direction. So I would say seek out the guidance of somebody who is experienced and can direct you in the proper way.
I completely agree. And obviously the next great hurdle to overcome is access, to be able to provide people safe and secure places where they can experience these beneficial healings safely. But one word of safety that I've lived on for the last 50 years and valued incredibly highly is to be aware that when you expand your consciousness, which you do optimally on psychedelics, look after your blood sugar level, because nerves, brain cells combust glucose at a very high rate. I knew because my father was a diabetic, and the sugar level can drop. So one needs to have time-release vitamin C, it's very prosaic, to make adrenaline, because without vitamin C you can't make adrenaline, and adrenaline is what raises the sugar level from the stored glucose in the body, so you can't come to harm. And the other is to have lots of sweet meats, like countries which get high regularly, like Morocco or India or those sort of countries, naturally have. Because when your sugar level drops, people can get a bit paranoid, a bit confused, a bit lost. And then if you know how to control your sugar level, you suddenly feel that you're mistress or master of the horse you're riding. So the horse is much stronger than normal, but with that conscious control, you can guide the horse to go where you want. So keep safe, I would say, to anyone who uses these compounds.
Good advice.
Very good words of caution there. On that topic, I'm wondering, is there anyone that should not take psychedelics or would not benefit from the experience, or are there any potential downsides of taking psychedelics?
I think there can be downsides, particularly if someone's very close to or close to a psychotic situation. It is definitely, it disturbs the balance, and it makes the whole mind, brain more entropic, more chaotic. So I think a safe situation is very much needed. And I think in time we'll get better at testing, the safety. But I have to say, in all the research that we and other people have done, there's been no disasters. People have not had bad effects if they're, as Andrew was saying, carefully looked after.
Amanda, how do you feel about age appropriateness of taking psychedelics? Is there an age under which you think you would not recommend it?
Just for I think children have enough energy without them. But in cultures, as you well know, where they take ayahuasca and they give the children a bit when they're on their tongue when they're born, and if they take a little bit when the parents are drinking ayahuasca, the children do too when they're ready. So I'm not religiously against it, but I feel it comes with a certain maturity, 16, 18, that sort of age. And I think it will be a wonderful medicine for old age. And I think that's where we're depriving our old people by not familiarizing them with the potential of microdosing.
Are we in that category of old age?
I think I'm very grateful to know the secrets of how to enhance consciousness.
Yes.
And I'd love to share them with everyone. So that's really my mission, is how do you share this wonderful knowledge? And it's rather like the elephant in the story who always spat out the medicine, however hard his keeper tried to disguise it. He'd eat everything around them and then spit out the medicine. Well, that's rather how society is now. But hopefully, slowly, with the best science, it will slowly integrate this knowledge and change accordingly. So it's an exciting time, and we're very lucky to have experienced the real excitement of the 60s. There was a bursting excitement in those times, which I don't think we've got now. But what we've got now is very steady and positive, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a momentum that can't be stopped now. It's really building. I like to tell people to look at a YouTube video that is fabulous. It's from the late 1950s. If you search on YouTube for Housewife on LSD, it is the most wonderful portrait of spiritual awakening. So I won't tell you any more about it, but watch that and tell other people to watch that.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So where do both of you see this psychedelic revolution going? What is your hope for this? What would be, the absolute best case scenario?
I think it comes from being a revolution to an evolution. And I think Homo sapiens will be a happier and better species when it has absorbed that into the social fabric by which it kind of balances itself. Not meaning to say that everyone takes psychedelics, but meaning to say it's an accepted part of the culture.
Without that, Homo sapiens may cease to be a species. I think we really are at that brink that you referred to earlier in our relations with the environment and the way we treat each other. And this might be the corrective that can avert disaster. That's my hope.
Yes. And no one would mind if the rather nasty little ape disappeared, except us. We better do the best we can to make us survive. And I think psychedelics is a key to that.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. So are there any types of questions, or what kind of questions would you want to see answered by future research?
There are so many, because I think we're only just opening the door to the potential of psychedelics. I'm at the moment, I've got 40 research projects on my menu. And the thing, funny enough, it's more difficult for a philanthropic organization like myself, completely funded by philanthropy, to do research at the moment, because big business has got into it, and there are very few places and institutions and scientists, many of whom I've trained, and they are getting bought up by the danger of. So we need to governments should get into funding research as well as being dependent on private funding and investment. There is a certain danger of the investment element, although I think it's essential to get us moving, because we need to open clinics and we need to move the research forward very quickly, and we need as many people doing it as possible to move it forward. And I think that's happening. I think it's expanding. So I think we're on the right track. But we need the governments to change these ridiculous UN conventions, which 190 countries have signed up to, and they're just wrong, and they're causing global misery, and we should change them.
Well, there's a few countries that are changing them, as you know. Portugal, Mexico, Colombia is considering it. So I think it's the beginning of a trend.
Yes, it's very funny that the maker of the problem is the benefiting the most from the changing. Well done, America, to be able to change. Yeah.
Do you think we'll ever get to a point where these will be widely accessible for all levels of society?
Yes.
It's common sense, and either our species sadly goes extinct, or we come to realize, well, these are very valuable medicines, let's make use of them.
Yeah.
We need to get to a point where we have worldwide drug policy reform. What exactly would that look like, or what steps? You mentioned government. What other steps would we need to take?
I think, first of all, the society has to recognize that criminal law is an inappropriate vehicle to shape people's relationships with drugs. And we have to begin dismantling. I don't think it can be done overnight. I think it has to be a gradual process of dismantling the whole superstructure of criminal law around drugs, and replacing that with social education, with true drug education, and using social forces to shape drug use in a better, more positive direction. And that's a challenging thing to do, but it's beginning to happen with cannabis. I think it will then begin to happen with psychedelics, and I think the process is underway, but that's the direction we have to go.
About 10 years ago, I commissioned a report on rewriting the UN conventions, so individual countries could decriminalize and reschedule according to what they thought was the right for their citizens. And I still think that that's what we should be doing. We shouldn't be caught in this completely mistaken grip of repression, which was really all started because of the wrong reasons. We need to shake ourselves free. I mean, governments are very much like neurotic human beings with an over-restrictive ego, forcing them and their poor citizens into the wrong decisions. And we need, in a sense, the whole institution to loosen up and realize that they're not actually right in the views they've got. They need to adapt. we need to adapt to keep surviving as an animal. And there's a better way of controlling. Psychoactive plants should not be illegal. They should be regulated and they should be educated. But making them illegal is the wrong way forward. And it's caused terrible harm. And I think it's time for us to recognize that harm and correct it. And I think that we're going in that way. So let's hope we continue.
What would you say is the most important message that people need to get going forward in regards to psychedelics?
Don't believe what you've been told. I'm very grateful to my father who said, never believe what you're told. Whatever the government tells you, do the opposite. And in a sense, I think there's great wisdom in finding your own truth. And the truth is that expanding the range of consciousness is an advantage to the individual and also to the community. And so the community should respect those who do it and make it safe for people who want to do it and provide it in a safe setting for those who need it. And I think our society will move, because we're a very clever little animal. On the whole, we do the trick which makes us survive. So I think we'll survive, but I think we have to learn to adapt.
I would say seek out truthful information about these substances and seek out people who are knowledgeable and qualified by their own experience to give useful information about them.
Are there any questions that either of you have for each other?
I found I've agreed very much with
Same. And I'd love to meet you physically rather than virtually, Amanda. So I hope that will happen sometime.
Do come to England and to Beckley, and I'd welcome to.
Thank you.
Are there any final words that you would like to leave the audience with today?
Well, I think, as Amanda said, I think we are headed in the right direction.
Yes, I do. And I would say we've caught up with where we were in 1967, so, or even surpassed it. So we're doing well. We're a slow animal, but we learn in the end, I think. And now we have to learn, because we've got to a crucial point where we're in an epidemic of mental illness as a species, and we need better treatments than are available.
And self-destructive behavior, not just mental illness.
And it has shown that psychedelics leave an afterglow of being more open, more compassionate, and closer to nature, which is very important. And I remember Albert Hoffman saying what gave him the most joy was when an inner center kid would write to him and say, for the first time, I've seen the beauty of nature. And being one with nature is a very important thing, and we humans have lost that to a large degree, and we need to re-establish that relationship, I think. And actually, as the illustrations coming from the brain images we've done on LSD and psilocybin, what they show is an increase in connectivity. And I think that's key to health, is increasing the connectivity between the different parts of the brain, between the different parts of the body, humans, nature, the whole thing. And so I think it's a very good medicine. That's what I'd like to say.
Wonderful.
Microdose, large dose, take it or leave it.
Well, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure having a chance to talk with you both today and hear your perspectives and your wonderful experience. Like we said, you're both legendary in the field, and your contributions have made such a difference in so many people's lives. So thank you so much for being here with us today on the inaugural World Psychedelics Day, and thank you for all of the work that you're doing in the field.
Well, thank you for asking such nice questions.
Yes.
So what a wonderful and important discussion that wraps up our panel today with Andrew Weil and Amanda Fielding. Again, a historic meeting of two legendary pioneers as a part of World Psychedelics Day. So thank you so much to our speakers who have taken their time out of their schedules to look at these important topics in the psychedelic sphere. And thank you to all of our sponsors for World Psychedelics Day and everyone that has contributed to make this happen. And thank you to all of you for tuning in. Happy World Psychedelics Day.